We're talking the next Fed head here on Kitco News today. While Bernanke hasn't officially said he's stepping down from the role, President Obama hinted in a June interview that the chairman has stayed longer than he wanted to. This led to a short list of candidates being created. So now we have Larry Summers, Janet Yellen, and Don Kohn all up for the position. Today on the show, we have Keith Fitz-Gerald. He's the Chief Investment Officer for MoneyMorning.com. We'll be getting his points of view on these candidates and, most importantly, who's the best bet for gold. Keith, thanks so much for joining us from your home in Oregon.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Keith, I'm sure you're not short of any opinion on this topic.
No, I never have opinions.
Yes, we know you're always soft-spoken, Keith. That's why we brought you on today to look at the possible candidates for the next Fed head. But before we get your assessment, is this a role and job that people want?
You know, that's an interesting question. I can't imagine any person in their right mind voluntarily stepping into the breach here at the Fed. We are arguably running an economic disaster. It's a train wreck that everybody knows is happening at an institution that is supposed to be apolitical, but in fact has turned into a highly politicized tool, and arguably an outdated, outmoded one at that.
So from the list that has emerged, Keith, do you think it's a real one, or do you think really come the time to pick the next Fed head, Obama will throw a curveball and we'll see a completely different candidate emerge?
You know, it's interesting. In the years past, I would have said there could have been a curveball, but you know, today's environment in the United States is highly politicized. I think they have to do a lot of leaking beforehand. There's a lot of behind the doors discussion taking place, because the last thing the administration wants, as under pressure as it is to throw a name out there and be summarily rejected by the congressional leaders. So I think they're floating a lot of ideas out there. I think there's a lot of discussion taking place behind the scenes. Unfortunately, that's not in front of the American public.
So we have Yellen, Summers, Kohn, each coming with their own set of baggage, Keith. But if we have to look at each one individually now, let's start with Janet Yellen, who most are saying is a shoo-in for the position.
Well, you know, Janet Yellen's never met a printing press she didn't like. So to me, this is an issue. You know, her solution to everything is inflationary. It's, you know, she's got some powerful endorsements. I think Krugman, FDIC, former chair, Amherst professor Sheila Bair is on them. Excuse my language here. You know, she's qualified. She's been around the central banking environment. I could see that. She'd break some important glass barriers. She'd be the first woman chair of the Fed. So, you know, there's some things I understand about the argument, but I'm uniquely disturbed about the fact that she really has no significant monetary experience as real money works. She's got plenty of monetary experience inside the Fed and organizations like it, but I'm worried she doesn't know how real money actually works.
Would Yellen be an extension of Bernanke then, Keith? Would it just be status quo?
I think that's a very fair statement. You know, again, you know, one of the things we have to remember about the Fed is, regardless of who's actually in charge of it, it's utilizing badly flawed economic theory that at this point we have a mountain of evidence suggests doesn't work. So the last thing we want is somebody who's going to print money into a crisis that was caused by arguably too much money in the first place.
So if we look at Larry Summers now, who under Clinton was for deregulation and under Obama, following the financial crisis, changed his tune for more regulation, so more reactive than proactive. How do you view Larry Summers?
Well, Larry Summers is a lightning rod. I mean, let's not forget that he was at the center of the cabal that led to this crisis. And so, you know, he's just as bad as Yellen, in my opinion. I think, you know, you're going to take somebody who arguably is a lightning rod, who's known for brash decision making, who has not displayed an ability to work well in the sandbox with others. You know, to me, the Fed, if it's going to continue to function, has to, by its very nature, work with a lot of different agencies. I don't know that he's the guy to do that.
Then we saw Kohn become a contender. What are your thoughts on him, Keith?
Yeah, you know, I don't know what to make of that, frankly. Again, insider, long-time experience. Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other than this was kind of a surprise that he's even mentioned as a serious front runner.
And finally, Keith, would one of these candidates be better news for gold?
You know, that's an interesting question, too. I think, Yellen to me would be the best news for gold on the assumption that we're going to have the most value to protect. Summers, I think, would be good for gold, but for a very different reason. I think Summers would be a financial disaster, and that would prompt millions of gold investors to look for security and value. Combs, on the other hand, is a wild card. To me, that's just status quo. I think, gold will do what it's doing today with very little changes.
Keith, we'll let you off the hook now. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for watching this edition of Kitco News. You can email us at newsfeedback@kitco.com or follow me on Twitter @Daniela Cambone. Thanks for watching.